I'd now like to invite Michael up to talk to us about a trillion sensor world. So this is the new world that we're all going to be living in one day, and Michael's going to tell us how to keep that secure. Over to you. Thank you.
Talk about it in a second, but before, just a nice piece of information. Back about 9 years ago, when I first started my Army service as a young, no-wise lieutenant, one of the first things I remember is Zohar here giving me the onboarding talk. So he was already back then my commander's commander's commander. Okay, so it's kind of an honor to stand on the same stage now. Anyway, so what we do in Aperio is, we like to call it, especially in the media, a lie detector for machines. We authenticate that the physical measurements of the world around you that you get in your IoT devices, in your control room, etc., really do represent the real state of affairs of our real world. The techniques are actually kind of similar to BioCatch, but instead of human behavior analytics, we do pipe behavioral analytics. But I'm not going to talk about that too much, A, because it's kind of complicated to talk about in 10 minutes. But mostly it's more interesting why we're doing that, right? Who cares? More interestingly, why are people actually paying us money for that? So imagine a day in the pretty near future. You wake up, your motion detectors in your bedroom detect that you got out of bed, so they automatically start your coffee machine, so you have it ready when you go into the kitchen, right? So that's nice, and then you get dressed, you go and brush your teeth. Of course, your smart toothbrush on the way is measuring your temperature, and of course has sensors to measure the chemical composition of your saliva, just to make sure that you're not catching up any type of disease, any bug. It's already in your mouth. Yeah, why not do that? So then you finish getting ready. You go to work. You go into your autonomous or smart car. Maybe you're driving it, maybe not. Doesn't really matter. You start driving, but all of a sudden it makes an abrupt stop. You look ahead in front, and you see a cat running across the street. Thank God that the proximity sensors are working well with small moving objects, right? So you go to work, you spend there a few hours, then you go grab a lunch in the office cafeteria. Of course, your spoon not only makes sure that the temperature of your food is not too high and the composition doesn't contain any problematic hazardous material with a too high concentration. Not only that, but it also makes sure that there are no materials that you personally are allergic to. Now, you might ask, how would the spoon know who I am or what my allergies are? But of course, it has fingerprint sensors built in, right? You're holding it in your hand, and it's the same sensors that you already have in your smartphones today, right? So it taps into the central healthcare database and makes sure that you have no peanuts in your food. Okay. Now, and this is not science fiction, okay? All the technology I just mentioned already exists. The only question is, when is it going to be everyday life? 5 years or 10 years, basically. And this is already happening today, okay? We are starting to measure basically everything that we can and all the time. The same thing, if you go to a power plant or a manufacturing facility, this is old news for them. Okay, they've been measuring whatever they can about their manufacturing process for the past 20 or 30 years. Okay, and this process, if you extrapolate, it depends on which prediction do you believe, which company do you trust. But in about 5 or 7 years, we will be adding about 1 trillion sensors every year to the world, measuring pretty much everything that we can. And we can see the starts of these exponential processes already. When the iPhone came out about 10 years ago, it had 5 sensors on board, physical sensors. Today it has 21. And the reason is a positive feedback loop, right? The more sensor data, the more real-time physical information, personalized physical information about the user you have, the more smart people find smart ways to make use of it, right? You have BioCatch that is very, let's say, based on the information that the smartphone is measuring about the user. And the more sensors you have, the more apps you have, the more apps you have, the more sensors you have, etc. Now, I've been in the cybersecurity industry for almost a decade now. And one of the things that you learn to adapt is a mindset that is very pessimistic. Much like Zora before me, the first thing I think about when I see a future that is very reliant on this wealth of data is what is going to go wrong. And remember, if something can go wrong and there is a financial incentive for it, it will go wrong eventually. So that's kind of the hacker inside the mentality that you gotta adapt. So I'll give you just a couple of examples to provoke your curiosity about, let's say, the more original hacks that will come in the near future. So first of all, we all heard about the buzz of autonomous cars, smart cars, whatever. How do you protect it? How do you hack the Modbus? Basically, how do you make it crash into a wall basically by being in Russia, right? Which is very interesting, and there are a lot of companies doing interesting work there. But one of the basically easiest ways to make it happen, and remember, as a hacker, I always look for the easiest way to accomplish my goal, is by convincing the car, by falsifying the proximity sensors that we mentioned before, that this wall is not here, but is actually 5 meters further away. Now, this is important to understand. The AI, the very sophisticated control mechanisms that are driving this car, are working perfectly fine. The only issue is that the world that they see, and the only way they can see any of the world is through these sensors, through these physical measurement devices, is just not the real world. Okay, this is not reality. So it works perfectly fine, and it's going to crash into the wall. So already it's an interesting idea that hackers can kill people just by forging physical data. I'll give you another example, this time from the healthcare industry, that was mentioned before. With the rise of Fitbit and other healthcare monitoring, personalized devices that are measuring your heart rate, your blood pressure, your conductivity of your skin, everything you can possibly think. And obviously, it will only rise, right? Because you want to know how healthy you are and what's going on with you. So one of the first influences that are going to happen is that you will have differential rates of health insurance. Right? The healthier you are, the less premium every month you should pay. Right? If you go out jogging every day in the morning, you should pay less for your insurance than your neighbor who's a couch potato. Right? It only makes sense. The same process is already happening in the automotive insurance industry. So this is going to happen. And obviously, whenever there's profit to be had, there's a motivation to, let's say, cheat the system. So people will voluntarily, with no hackers involved, just by themselves, will try to forge, to send back to the insurance companies data that looks perfectly healthy. Look how healthy I am. Please give me a discount on my next insurance policy. But the insurance companies aren't the only ones who care about your personalized data. The basic reason you want to do this is because you want to know if you're going to have a heart attack, if you see early onset symptoms, you really want to rush to the hospital, because if you're there in time during the heart attack, your chances of survival go way up. So whenever your systems, or monitoring systems, send back to your doctor, well, we have a suspicion that perhaps you have, I don't know, 20% heart attack in the next few hours, and you get an SMS from your doctor, I'm not sure, but you better go, come to check it out. You're going to do it because you want to live, okay? Very strong incentive. Now, imagine a hacker that, again, sends falsified physical data. It's pretty easy to falsify, to forge something that looks like the early onset of a heart attack. It's not a challenge once you have some level of control. And now, well, it's annoying. You get an SMS from a doctor who's scared for your health, for your life. You get there, they check you out. They say, no, everything's fine. We don't know. The system malfunctions. That's annoying. But the problem starts when you have a team of hackers that have the same type of control, but for half of the population of London. And they do it simultaneously. Now, not only do you have a panic attack and half the city is trying to rush into the hospitals, you also have an overload at the hospitals because they don't know if these sensor readings are true or false, right? How do they separate before they check you out thoroughly? Which kind of sucks. Now, on a more, let's say, positive note, yeah, not going to talk about that. I do want to say that for every, let's say, a black hat hacker in the proverbial Russian basement, you have white hat hackers thinking how to prevent these types of threats and attacks before they happen and not after, which is sometimes kind of too late. This is us. These are the much smarter people in our team. Come talk to me if you're like the vision of sensor world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael, for a really very insightful presentation.